What is up, members of my collector corps? It is I, Super Mariozilla, or you could call me Vinny, and today we will be taking a look at the Super 7 Toho Ultimates Godzilla 1989 Heat Ray version New York Comic-Con exclusive. The figure was revealed a few days before New York Comic-Con by Super 7, and fans were skeptical considering the first Godzilla was not up to snuff. I don't have the figure yet, please don't ask me for comparisons. But some people were still excited to see the figure announced. It looked to be a cool exclusive figure, it was neat to see this, and it glows in the dark. That's pretty cool. And the first Super 7 Godzilla to come with a beam. That's awesome. And the beam also glows in the dark. The MSRP also clocks in at $85, so this seems to be a nice looking figure with a cool looking gimmick. But is it enough to get everyone to buy? Because this figure seems to not have much improvement from the previous Godzilla, just looks like to be a straight repaint. Is this a lazy cash grab, or was a good amount of effort placed into this to justify a purchase? I'm pretty sure that's why you clicked on this video. Let's see if this is the Godzilla from Super 7 worth grabbing. And let's see if this figure is worthy of a spot on your Heisei Godzilla shelf. So generally speaking, I think this figure sculpt-wise looks pretty solid. Not many issues with that department. I mean, not everything is 100% accurate to the original suit, but still retains all the bumps and grooves and crevices we've come to expect in most of, if not all, Godzilla figures. The head sculpt I'd say is on point, but it does not 100% resemble Godzilla's suit and more so other Heisei Godzilla suits. Paint, however, does not do a great job complementing the sculpt in some areas. The body, from what it looks like, I think does have a bit of a wash in some areas like the legs. Some of it does look nice. Others where it looks rough barely has this wash. The teeth are kinda sloppy, not the cleanest paint job on them. The eyes, I believe, are decals as opposed to being painted on. There's not much paint on the body besides the traditional Godzilla charcoal black, but it's somewhat glossy for some reason, and I hate that. I hate that so much. No Godzilla toy, unless it's supposed to look wet from water, should ever have gloss of any kind. As I said, the muscly, scaly sculpt looks great, but not as highlighted as it could have been from the paint job, which isn't outright bad, but really could have used some touch-ups to make it look nicer. Claws aren't that special, just weird attempts at shading. Look at the base of the claw, it looks like a subtle brown stripe. Again, was this a shading attempt? Also, some areas of the sculpt do come off as really soft, probably to help accommodate for the articulation, but either way, it does look a little bit awkward when caught. Remember that shading on the claws? It's on the toes as well, and it's easier to see. Again, I appreciate what they did for the sculpt, it looks great, and only in some areas the paint does it justice, but not all. And again, I hate the glossy finish. The dorsal plates look great, however. All of them are transparent and have an excellent gradient effect. From an ice white to an icy sky blue on the tips, the gradient effect looks good. And the smaller dorsal plates don't look too bad either, if not a little chalky. Some of the line work when looking up close is fuzzy, but not an issue when looking from afar. The dorsal plates also glow in the dark, and the glow looks really nice. I'll show you later. Overall, I think Godzilla looks great sculpt-wise. The paint job can definitely use some work, because paint is supposed to help complement the sculpt. Come on, Super 7. I know you can do better than this.
So Godzilla's articulation is not going to be as poseable as SH Monster Arts, for example, but that's fine. They're not trying to compete with them, so it's fine that articulation is not as movable. But nonetheless, you could still get him in a few poses. It's possible. So let's see what he's got. He has a double ball peg in the head, and I think in the neck as well, so he can look down just about that far, and he can look up. Not very far at all because the sculpt gets in the way, so he could just look straight ahead. Can lean and also look side to side. Arms are on a swivel hinge. and shoulders can hinge upward more than 90 degrees, just a little bit more. There is a dedicated bicep swivel. The elbows can swivel as well, but there is a hinge right here for the elbows, so you can bend them. So you can bend them just about 90 degrees. There's a swivel in the waist. You could go a full 360 if you want to, but do you really want that? Legs. I think they're on ball joints. They can kick outward just about this far. Can kick forward just about this far, although it does kick forward at an angle, and backward not very far at all. Knees can bend just a little bit less than 90 degrees. It's like 45 degrees. And ankles are on a swivel hinge. So he can kick his ankles forward. So he can kick his ankles forward just about this far. And backward. Just about this far. And of course, the ankle rocker he has is decent. Tail. On a series of ball joints, but it's not as fluid as other figures. First of all, there's barely any turning with this. There's only rotation. So you can't pose the tail like this unless you turn the whole tail the other way. So that's kind of Even then, the tail is really stiff. You can barely get anything out of it. Also, the base of the tail is loosey-goosey. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. That's not cool. A Super 7. I don't like that. That's not cool. Super 7. Also, one thing I neglected to mention is the articulation can be a bit stiff. You'll probably have a hard time moving some of the joints, mainly the knees and also the ankles. But everywhere else, you should be fine. Just keep in mind with the legs and the ankles and even the knees, because they will give you a hard time. They've given me a hard time. In case they do, make sure you use heat to heat them up, and that'll loosen them right up. So keep that in mind. So it is possible to get Super 7 Godzilla into plenty of poses. Although he is still, ow! I just pinched myself. Although he is still a little bit limited compared to other figures. He's still limited compared to other figures. In which case, his articulation is not terrible. It's fine. It works. It does its job. It's meant to do it. It's meant to pose just about this much. It's not meant to go crazy, which is fine. But there could have been some improvements with the stability. I think that's my only gripe. There could have been some improvements with the stability, and also the head should have a bit more range, like when it comes to looking in the upward direction. There could be some improvements to make this posable, but at the same time not make it super posable, like in terms of how many joints they add. Maybe I'm not explaining this in a good job, but you get what I mean. To make it more fluid is what I'm saying, and also make sure your joints are stable. Otherwise, you'll end up with loosey-goosey stuff like this. So his articulation is not bad, but is just something to get used to. That's all it is. It's just something you have to get used to.
So Godzilla comes with a decent amount of stuff. The Biollante accessories are not included here though. I hear the parts can be mixed and matched between both versions, which is good to know. So let's look at all of these. First is 2 open hands, next 2 dynamic posed hands, and 2 fist hands. Yeah, a Godzilla figure with fists. Rock on, Super 7. I'm glad we got fists with Godzilla this time around. That's pretty cool. Next is Godzilla with the heat ray. It looks really good sculpt wise. Paint is not too bad here and looks good, matches the body, I'd say. The heat ray has a very nice wavy sculpt and has a fiery end to it. Of course we have blue, which looks good, but the base color is this milky kind of white. I wish it was brighter. It looks great when on the figure, and I'm glad no additional support stand is needed for this. That's awesome. And as I've said before, the figure and the beam glow in the dark. I had to shut off the lights and crank up the exposure so you can see it properly, but this is how the glow would look in person. And you know what? I think it looks great. It may seem like a cheap gimmick, but honestly, I was surprised with how well both the plates and the beam glowed in the dark. Not practical for toy photography, but just neat to look at on your shelf with the lights off. Accessories are really nice. I love the alternate hands Godzilla got, and the atomic breath is a nice touch. It matches with the dorsal plates, and both have a very nice glow when in the dark. Rock on, Super 7. I'm a fan of what we got here. Also, I hear this beam head can be used on the original Godzilla 89 release if you so wish. So, you have your options if you have both that one and this figure. Here's a size comparison with other figures you may or may not own. Please excuse me, but this is my only Super 7 Godzilla figure at the moment, so I'm limited to comparing this guy with my smaller 6-inch scale kaiju figures. Super 7 figures are pretty big and don't scale with other lines, and more self-contained with their own line. So keep that in mind if you plan to get any of these guys. I have my issues, but ultimately, no pun intended, this is a solid release. I only complained and pointed out the issues because I really want to see them improve. I want to see this line do well. So Super 7, if you're watching this, please listen to what the fans have to say. We want to see your stuff do better. I was happy when I made my purchase at New York Comic Con, and it is a great idea for an exclusive. If you're unable to get this, don't feel too bad. There's still the OG Godzilla 89 release and possibly more coming in the future. However, in case you can't go to New York Comic Con, this figure will be up for pre-order on the United States Godzilla store and I believe Super 7 store as well, but I could be wrong about the latter. But also keep in mind, his MSRP clocks in at $85, which may seem steep, but then you realize these figures are huge. So I think it's reasonably priced, but you gotta be aware of the issues and lower your expectations. Maybe it's because I lowered my expectations, but I found myself having a lot of fun with this release, and I'm happy to make this my first ever Super 7 product, and first dive into the Toho Ultimates line of Godzilla figures. If you like what you see, I'd say go for it and grab it. I look forward to what Super 7 has in store for the future, but like I said, please address the issues and make some improvements, and I'll be more than happy to support. I'll give Godzilla a 7.5 out of 10.